Welcome to episode 56 of The Liz McMullen Show. I have a delight for my listeners. I not only have the amazing Linda Kay Silva on as my guest, but I have my very first guest host, Beth Burnet. Welcome to the show, Beth. I know you're going to rip it up and make it amazing and sparkly, and there'll be butterflies somewhere. I know it.
Rainbows and butterflies that smell like unicorn's breath, Liz.
My God, yes, and all of it's shooting out your ass.
I didn't know you were an ass woman, Linda. That's telling.
I'm the nice one in this relationship, just for the record.
Beth, I'm pretty sure everyone already knew that.
I think you're the nice one in a lot of the relationships, Beth. Beth and I have some mutual acclaim from the summer where I broke her glasses on my boobs.
Yes, I broke my glasses on Liz McMullen's breast. It's my GCLS con claim to fame.
We love to hug, Beth and I, and Beth was swooping in for an awesome hug, and unfortunately her glasses became ajar, and they whacked on my boob and then fell on the floor. And then you had how many butches on the floor looking for your screw?
7 butches on their knees in front of me looking for the pieces for my glasses.
See, that's what I bring to my show, guys. I bring Beth. She's the one who brings them all and binds them.
I think you're both scaring the shit out of me.
I would find it very difficult to believe that there's much in this world that scares you, Linda Kay.
All right, let's go, girls.
All right. Roll up those sleeves. I'm going to be out of order because I want to talk about the Echo books before I talk about the Maneater books. But I have a question for the Horde. Churchill has tons of quotes, obviously, but was that inspired by you finding a book of quotes earlier this year, or is that unrelated?
No, it's unrelated. I have a ton of books of quotes, women, writers, teachers. I love quote books, but no, I liked, Winston Churchill has some of the best quotes ever, and I thought having a character named after him who spoke it with a lot of really great quotes would be a lot of fun. So that's where he came from, and we don't want to give anything away about Churchill, but oh boy, is that sad.
Don't get me started on that.
All right, so I'm going to reel back because I was just curious about that because I remember on Facebook you said that you had found a particular book of quotes and then you were posting them, and that was the first thing that came to mind when I met Churchill.
Okay.
So back to the Echo series. I reread Magical Echo before I read Echo's Revenge to make sure I still had my Danica fixed.
Yeah, that's right. You've got a little Woody for Daddy, don't you?
I don't know if my Ladywood is for Danica in a sexual sense, but I would love to have her have my back.
Yes, absolutely. She's definitely the person that you want in any situation where there might be even a little bit of danger, because you know that she's going to give you every single thing she has. And I think that's the kind of friend that we all want in that moment. That's who she represents for me.
I loved this flashback that you had. I think it was in Echo's Revenge, where Danica and Echo were about to be bullied by, I guess, basketball players who were upset that Danica got on the team. And she figured out a way to say something that would scare the bejesus out of the girls, and the girls just ended up walking on by. And I thought that was great. I thought, that she really has a handle on survival. And it would never have occurred to me to say the things that she said. But I was like, you are a little badass, and I want to be your friend.
Well, I think, especially, I've taught in Oakland, and I learned an awful lot about the African-American community from my students. And one of the things that was really clear is even in the 90s and early 21st century, black and white still, if you're of mixed race, that you're still going to have issues. It's not, we'd like to have the pie in the sky. Oh, let's all just hold hands and love one another, and that really isn't how it is. Mm-mm. And I think Danica represents that struggle and that struggle for those of us that are lesbians, that struggle to fit in. That she's neither all black nor all white, and neither side had ever really embraced her. And I think so many of us have experienced that as lesbians. So she hits a lot of different chords, I think, for readers.
And she says great things like, "Oh hell no."
That's so funny that you say that, because somebody asked me, about 3 weeks ago, about the way that she talks in those clipped, there's a word in a period and a word in a period. And I get that clearly from the girls that I taught. It was a high school in Oakland, and they'll do that. And you have to, it's hard to get that sound when she would say, "Let go of me." And to be able to get that kind of, or "I will tear your throat out." And she does that. I think that it's probably one of the more successful dialogue techniques used for her, because I'm afraid of her.
Certainly.
Yeah, I wouldn't mess with her.
No, I mean, like, she has special places to put her Glock in her purses.
God. She's totally in love with that gun. It's hysterical.
There has to be that character, though, doesn't there, that can do the things that you won't let your main character do for fear of losing the audience?
Absolutely. And I think that you have to have that yin and yang. I think that's what we're all kind of looking for, whether it's your lover, your partner, your friend. And I love the fact that Danica will pull that Glock, that regardless of what's going on and what could happen to her for shooting somebody, she doesn't, that moment's not important to her. What's important is saving anybody, including herself, that she's with. And I really like that. I am in this moment, and even if I have to go to jail for it, this is the only moment that I'm living at this time. And I like that. I think she's cool. There's like
this, what I thought was awesome in Magical Echo was getting Jasmine and Danica in the same room. And what I love is, like, one of the beauties of Danica, who I think is still my all-time favorite character you've ever created, is that she's this brilliant woman. She is insanely brilliant when it comes to technology and so many things. And she also has this aspect of her upbringing, where the ghetto will come out. But I love how versatile she is, because she's gorgeous and she's tall and she's commanding and very protective of Echo. And then just certain pieces of dialogue come out. And there's this one point where Danica is in the same room with Jasmine, and this is the quote: "Suddenly Danica burst out laughing. 'Oh shit, Clark, I know what happened in here. Bailey did this to her face, and oh my God,' she tatted the bitch's face." I was like, oh.
Yeah, because there's somebody who comes to life in the next couple of books is Bailey. And that's pretty brutal. I mean, when you can take and ruin somebody's dream, I think that you're living on the edge. And Danica has a lot of respect for Bailey. There's that. They're kind of friends, but there's that fine line between who's more butch than the other. But I got to tell you, that whole going ghetto is really part of the African American culture, and I think that's something that again I learned from my students, which was my mother, when she works around the white people. This is one of my students. She said she speaks just like you, but when she gets home, man, she said you would never recognize her. Her colleagues would not recognize her. And so Danica has that. Yes, she's very, she went to Mills. She's very refined. She's very polished. But dang, she goes from zero to ghetto in 2 seconds.
And I love how over and over again in Magical Echo and Echo's Revenge, like, I have killed someone, all right? Like, she's like, I am not bluffing.
Oh, Liz, you love her.
I love her. I want her to be in my tribe. She's awesome. I had a Danica actually in high school.
Oh, see, that's why. That's why you're in love with her.
Yes, I had a Danica in high school. It was actually, I guess, she's half Puerto Rican and half Dominican. So I guess kind of mixed. And there's this time when, like, her sister was giving me a hard time. I was in her quinceañera, which is like a sweet 16 for Latinas. And her sister's boyfriend, or alleged boyfriend, had liked me and had danced with me. I wasn't interested in him, but was interested in me. And so we're in the car coming back from the quinceañera, and her sister's trying to read me about, how I shouldn't be, up in her boyfriend's business and whatnot. And my friend just stopped, and she's like, she does the head thing with the finger and, swirling in the air. And they actually swear to God, my friend Cindy put her sister in her place. Her sister stopped the car. It was late at night, so there weren't anybody going back and forth on the streets, but she stopped the car in the middle of the block and threatened to take my best friend out of the car, like to drag her out of the car and say, like, get out of my car, right? So every time her sister went around, she just relocked the lock. It wasn't going anywhere. But I remember thinking to myself, it wasn't until, like, I was bullied a lot, like in high school and in grade school and whatnot, and it wasn't until she stood up for me that I started thinking about standing up for myself.
Oh, all right.
And I found that if I step up, people step back. I was just so used to, avoiding confrontation or whatever that would mean. I didn't want to get jumped. I didn't want, somebody to find me when I'm walking home or something nasty to happen like that. So I was kind of like, be safe, be safe, be safe. And then, I watched Cindy go on for me, and I was like, I could do that. And, that was a part of me reclaiming myself. So you outed me, Linda. I had my own Danica.
There you go. Okay. Yeah, well, your secret's safe with nobody.
Nobody. So, yes, I love Danica. But I also, one of the things I enjoy between Magical Echo and Echo's Revenge is Echo really coming into her own. Like, she's like, no, Mr. Nice empath, she gets real, and she figures out her own way, and it's rough and it's tumble, and it's not something she would have normally have done, but she was cornered, and then she decided to take out the guns and fight her way out of the corner.
Yeah, it was definitely slow in developing, and I think that's the beauty of series, is that I finally I really hit my stride in terms of knowing when and where and how to grow her, because that's really kind of what you do with a series protagonist, is you have to grow them to a point where when they finally do what Echo did, then you go, yeah, that's right, I get it. Because had she done anything, been aggressive a couple of books ago, it would have been really, that's not within the character set that the skill set that I gave her. So it was nice to see her finally go, no, I am the bitch.
Yeah, and the way that you went about it, it was very subtle. I don't want the listeners to think that it was like this one particular moment. It was bits and pieces as things unfolded in Magical Echo. And then even in Echo's Revenge, she changed a lot over the course of the book. And it was something that makes it believable. That Echo, who was usually, peaceful resolution of conflicts girl, into, I can't play this way anymore. I have to change the way that I'm acting, to react to what's going on around her.
That's something Linda pointed out in one of her master classes, was that the main concept is not the story itself or not the action, but the way that the action and the way that the story changes the characters. And you're right, Linda, I think that it's what you do so well in a series, is allowing us that bit by bit of seeing the way all of these things that happen change your characters. It's very realistic.
Well, and I'm glad that you took that master class, because it's really fun, and it's fun to help people kind of see writing through different like a little bit different eyeballs. But I like that about Echo. I like the fact that, and I think that my favorite pieces of Magical and Revenge is her relationship with her sister, and how that, because that was so adversarial and very slowly that evolved into something that when you realize what's going on in Echo's Revenge and it's horrific, and then there's that little surprise, which I realize one of my very favorite pieces, like, oh my God, you have a what? Try not to give it away.
No.
For me, that's when I just fall in love with Echo all over again, because it was time, and she really did step up and make Danica proud.
The other thing that I've noticed, both, with the Maneater series and with Echo, because I haven't read all of your stuff, is that there's a sense of family building, of a chosen family, and that it evolves over time and gets knit in a way that's very different than, for a natural family. And then, in some ways, even though she's related, obviously, to her sister and her mother, they seem to be drawing each other to each other in a way that is very similar to how she draws, good and solid people around her.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I really worked hard on with Echo, is looking at family and having that kind of slowly unfold. And I just think that it must be why I like series, because I like the slow unfolding, and that, there's a beauty to it and a familiarity, because we've all had to create our own families, whether we were accepted for being gay or not. Every one of us over 30 has had to, somewhere along the road, manufacture that familial feel. And so I just think that particular part resonates with a lot of readers.
That's something that's cool about, like I'm thinking specifically about Man-Eaters and the Horde and the third one, which, by the way, one of the reader questions is, when is that coming out? And it better be soon, or I'm going to kill something. But before you answer that, one of the things about a chosen family is, a biological family, you can't get all of the aspects of everything that you need from everyone. And, I think we choose people that complement us. And that's something I really love, especially in Man-Eater series, is that Dallas is able to pull around all of the pieces of herself that maybe she doesn't have, that can be all of the different parts of her and help her really become a full working, soldier and person and family.
Well, and I think that's the piece that I'm really clear about, and why my characters don't have so much of the superhero complex, because they all have to, and especially Dallas. Dallas is, she's got, Einstein, which is one of my favorite characters. I love the teenage boyness and how all of the stuff that he knows, and it may seem trivial and insignificant, but the fact of the matter is his knowledge is what saves them in Man-Eaters. And so she doesn't, they're just not that perfect, Homeric hero that we would really love to see. They need other people to be able to complete their journey, and I think that's fun. I like that. I think that I probably am maybe a little bit better at ancillary characters and supporting cast than I am, the big Kahuna. But
I think that you've hit the nail on the head with team. Family, is a little tighter than a tighter version of a team. Mm-hmm. And so I think that working as a group, working as a team, treating each other well, looking out for each other, all this kind of chosen family behavior, I think that's maybe the way that you like to work with people, and it shows up with how your characters interact with each other.
Oh, I think you just hit it, Liz. Yes. Because when I think about when I was teaching middle school, we were always doing that kind of stuff, and it must be probably part of the athlete in me, having spent so much time dealing with team and teamwork and team building, and I think you nailed it.
And the other beauty of families and people that you're close to is there's this kind of call and answer, bouncing things off of each other or seeing yourself in the mirror that is the people who are around you. And there's a point in Magical Echo, like I'm using for the first time iBooks on my laptop. And so now I have things, showing up in front of me. It's very helpful. So here we have, what's it called? Echoes basically finally decide to get real. And this is how they react to her. You're beginning to scare the shit out of me. You've become one of those tough mama jama. Do you know who I am? Jesus Christ, I almost wet myself. Ditto, Bailey said from behind me. I'm pretty sure the odor I smell is from someone shitting their pants.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, I have no comment.
Do you know who I am?
I love that. Yeah, because she does. I mean, Melika was such a different kind of leader, and it was a different time, and they were on the bayou, and things are changing so rapidly in our world, and Echo was really slow to get it, and finally there's that. Yeah, I mean, she becomes the bender, and that makes all the difference in the world. Well, so let me ask you this, because Chris at Sapphire was asking me how many more Echoes I thought there would be. Mm-hmm. I would have liked for her to be endless, but I think I've got two more.
Okay.
Two more, and then we're going to have to wrap her up. Mm. I know, it kills me. I tell you what, that's going to be really hard.
So with facing the end of the series there, do you feel kind of a pressure? I mean, are there things like everything that you want to have happened to Echo, that you need to have that all wrapped up, and her character changes and where she ends up and how she completely has evolved as a human being?
I do feel that pressure, yeah, I do. And with it, because there's again, in a series you have a lot, especially a series as long as hers will be with the last two. You really do have to. Everything has to come to some kind of fruition and some kind of closure, and so there's a little bit more going back through the books to make sure that I figure out what happens to Jacob Marley. I mean, does he end up just eventually going away, or is he always going to be her confidant? I mean, there are so many different character issues that have to that I have to clean up, but it's hard. I had such a hard time ending the Delta Stevens series, and I think that Echo is. I'll probably cry. I will. It'll be hard. She's with me all the time, I mean, they are. I mean, I would say, and this is so weird, but Beth, I know that you would totally get this. I probably think about Delta Stevens once a day, and I haven't written a book. I mean, she's in Echo, but she hasn't. I haven't written her series in over 15 years. But by the way, just to give a little plug, Sapphire is bringing Delta's stories out in hardback and ebook. Woohoo! So that'll be fun.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up Echo, I did have a reader that wanted to know, and I guess it's because of the setting. First of all, she asked, how important is setting to you? And having recently gone to the Bayou again and Man-Eaters, have you lived there before, visited a lot, or just done a lot of research?
I have been there a lot, and there's something magical about the Louisiana Bayou. There's something magical about the Bayou and the people there. I've spent a good deal of time in the rainforest. I spent about 6 summers down in Costa Rica, and so I have a real affinity for nature. I do a lot of animal rescue and stuff, but I have been out on the bayou, and there's something just incredible about it. And I went before Katrina and I went after Katrina, And so I've had a number of people from New Orleans and people who actually have lived and spent time on the bayou who are like, oh my God, you so nailed it. And that's because I went. And like my new series, Demon Hunter, which is set in Savannah, I will spend a couple of weeks in Savannah getting the feel for that, because I just don't think research is enough. I think you have to actually feel the vibe.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, because I've never been in the bayou the way that people are in the bayou in your books, but I spent a month in New Orleans, and I visited New Orleans and Savannah often, and they're very, very different places. And even though they're steeped in tradition and history, there's a different flavor because of location, like the bayou as opposed to the sea. And I love Savannah, and it's definitely a good place to set any type of book. So, what is this new series that you have coming up now that you've mentioned it?
I'm very excited about this. The first one is called Demon Hunter, and it's about a woman who is a reluctant demon hunter and discovers that she, in fact, is possessed herself. And she has to hunt demons in order to feed the one inside her.
Ooh.
It's a family legacy. She's and I did actually a great deal of research on this. So it's not even though you may read it and go, God, this is kind of way out there. It actually isn't. A lot of it has to do with some of the demons that come from Malaysia and other areas, Bali and Indonesia. And so I finished the second one, which is The Demon Within, and actually just outlined today the third one. So we got 2 in the chute ready to go, and I think Demon Hunter comes out in April. Yeah. Well, because we know that I'm going to be wrapping up the Jesse Ferguson time travel series, and we know that we're going to be wrapping up Echo, and so this character just came to me, and I just like the idea of somebody being a reluctant, just the fact that this is her life, and Savannah again is a great place to, Savannah and New Orleans being the 2 most haunted cities in the United States. It's kind of a good place to have a series. So.
Without a doubt. I was born in Savannah too, Linda Kay, so if you need someone to go with you to do your research, I will happily volunteer myself.
You were born in Savannah?
I was.
Beth, I think that my bed will be empty, so you should just jump on in.
Oh.
We might as well make it a 3-fer.
Oh dear. Oh my! I have a reader question.
I've only been in my bed in 2 different cities, and we'll just leave it at that.
So
Renee's over there looking at me like, seriously?
So I do have some reader questions. One of the questions from Laura Quick, and I'm paraphrasing. Well, actually, I'll tell you the question, and I'll kind of tell you something else I want from you in the answer. Do you come from a storytelling family, and what was your favorite story growing up? And my question kind of is related to that as well. You've studied so many different forms of literature. Like, what sent you on that journey before you became professor, writer extraordinaire?
I do not come from a storytelling family. I do, however, come from a family of educators.
Okay.
And my aunt, my cousins, my uncles. And I think that we in that profession tell a lot of stories. But in terms of real storytelling, no. I'm not sure I understand the question, Liz, about before I became a professor, what sent me on my
Okay, what I want to know is what made you choose literature as a focus for your education? Like when you were a bright-eyed and bushy-tailed first year in college, what pointed you in that direction?
That's kind of funny. I came out of high school as a, quote, dumb jock, and I didn't really know how smart I was until I got into college. So I actually came into college as a speech pathology and audiology major simply because it was the longest major to say, because I didn't want everybody to assume I was going to become a PE teacher, which is what everybody in that your first reunion, we're like, oh, you're a teacher, a PE teacher, and I really enjoyed saying no English, because I'm not a dumb jock, and so after in my first term, I realized that I just really loved literature, and I loved English, and I loved writing. So I started writing, and I wrote, again, I think I told you, 4 terrible books. Until I finally had, just kept writing, because I loved it. I had no intentions of publishing. I didn't even know what to do. I just liked to write. And so I finally had a partner who said, well, why don't you submit something? And I looked at her like, what? Do what? Submit something? Oh, I don't know. And that kind of started the whole thing going. So I just love language. I just love words. So it was a no-brainer for me once I realized that I wasn't in fact a dumb jock, but it took my first term in college for me to go, holy shit, I'm really smart.
So this will seem like from out of left field, because that's how I roll.
Yes.
Okay, you have Alan.
Yes.
And I've gotten a lot of Alan questions. And I'm going to read you the Alan questions I have from Donna MacArthur, and you can choose to answer whatever you'd like.
Okay.
So they're all kind of, I know that you can weave them all into one answer, so that's the reason why I mention it that way.
Liz, when you're done with that, I have a very scary Alan question from a reader, so you go ahead with yours.
Okay, so these are the questions. When did you get Alan? What made you start taking pictures of his adventures? How many action figures, since we know they're not dolls, do you have? And if you could only keep 3, what would you choose?
Ooh.
Wow.
The last one I thought was really cool.
Totally good.
Yes. Okay. In a nutshell, I took one picture. I was bored. I was sitting here. I have a Hulk doll, and I have a Harley Ken. And I took one picture of Hulk killing Harley Ken, and I moved on with my world. I had no intentions of doing anything. And everybody starts texting me and messaging me and Facebooking me saying, what's the story? Really? What's the story? So I thought, okay, well, I'll give you a story. So I took a couple of pictures of Alan, and I walked away. And oh no, people couldn't let that happen. Couldn't let it go. You've got to finish the story. So the next thing I knew, I'm 5,200 pictures into Alan and his world, which I'd never intended on it. Now, the Alan story is kind of funny. Why it's Alan is that Alan was, my mother gave me Alan telling me that it was a Ken doll. And because we were super tight, I wore Kmart clothes through most of high school. And my parents just didn't spend a lot of money, and they certainly didn't spend a lot of money on me as a girl. My brother got everything. He got all the great stuff. I got a secondhand Ken doll, which I didn't know at the time. My entire life, I thought this was a Ken doll. So I was doing something on eBay, and I was like, where's my Ken doll? 12 hours later, I realized that whoever this little gay guy was not Ken. So I finally, and it was this friend, Alan Sherwood. Again, there's only 2 characters in the Barbie line with last names. Ken is not one of them. Barbie's last name is Johnson, and Alan's last name is Sherwood. And so I know way more than I want to know, but I was like, are you kidding me? She couldn't even buy me a real Ken doll. She got me this guy. So I found him on eBay and bought him, and then it got carried away. But I have to tell you, everywhere I go, I mean, you guys know, you saw my Facebook, that Jamie Lee Curtis came up to talk to me about Alan. The guy has a fan club, man.
He's very real.
It's weird. And I got to tell you, there are people that have recently said, okay, you need to stop. I want to hear about you on Facebook, not Alan, but people really, they miss his adventures. If he goes like 2 months, people want to know, for me, it gets me out from behind the computer. Renee just shakes her head and walks away, because she's like, okay, what are you doing? I'm talking to him, and when I'm getting ready for GCLS, this is hysterical. So I have Alan, and he's sitting on the counter, and I have all of his clothes laid out. And I'm going, okay, you don't have any black shoes. We need to get you some new black shoes, because these are just kind of, and it's just like, packing him took longer than packing myself.
Oh my God.
I know, and I wish that weren't true, but it's so true. Renee's over there going, "Oh, honey, you're telling them too much."
Liz, I gotta tell you this Alan story from the Left Coast Lesbian Conference. Kathy Warner and Linda and myself and our friend Chris and Renee and Kathy's partner, we're all sitting outside at a picnic table, and Alan is sitting on the table. And I looked down at him and I said, "Linda, there's something on his arm." And she said, "There is?" And she picked him up and looked at him for a second, and then she said, "Oh, he was bit by a zombie." And we all went, "Oh, okay." And Renee says, "Will you listen to yourselves? You're a bunch of freaks." We completely accepted that Alan was bit by a zombie, and we were okay with that.
Oh my God. But the funny part about that was that everybody leaned forward and looked to see the zombie bite.
And then leaned back and nodded.
Yeah, nodded like, yeah, sure. It made total sense. Of course, Alan was bitten by a zombie. And the look on Renee's face was like, "Do you hear yourselves? People are crazy." So yeah, Alan is, he's become something larger than life. I have to tell you, I have had some of the most amazing interactions with people because of him. And Yvonne Height and I had a really wonderful moment. I got to tell you, at GCLS, there were no less than 4 women who brought their action figures to be photographed with Alan. Somebody did actually dance with Alan on the dance floor. Can I dance with Alan? So it's not me. As much as it looks like I'm the crazy person, I would never ask to dance with a doll. Really? Yes. Moving on.
Where's the scary Alan question, Beth?
Well, listener Kim Considine sent in a question, and she wanted to know if Linda, if you had saved that strange alien thing that you had removed from your body, and if so, were you planning on having Alan fight it at some point in the future for the reader's pleasure?
Wow.
Wow.
Okay. I gotta tell you, no, the weird alien thing that came out of my shoulder went to the lab. There weren't other little things with it. And so, no, there would be no fighting it, although that would be a really gross. I think I would actually, people would probably unfriend me if I put Alan wrapped up in what like chicken fat.
Oh, my goodness.
I do want to tell you, you asked the question I did like about, because I do have so many action figures. The ones that I would keep would be Alan, Hulk, and the action figure of myself that I had made.
You had an action figure of yourself. What are you wearing?
Oh, Liz, you got to go on Facebook because it's very. I'm wearing leather pants, leather jacket, sunglasses, and biker boots.
Damn.
Yeah, you got to check that out.
Wow. Is there like a soft tail motorcycle that your figure rides?
Yeah, there you go. No. Can we move on?
Oh, yeah, we were talking about writing, weren't we? Oh, dear.
I was hoping so. I knew Alan would come up and be like, come on, really?
Come on, people. All right. This will take the conversation in a more serious direction. I have some writing questions.
Oh, okay.
And this is from Chris Conbisser. And she said, have you ever returned to a manuscript older than 5 years and yet to be published? And her question regarding it is, how would you go about fixing it? Because she, I think she said, if so, have you ever had the difficult task of saying, wow, I really like this, but it's so disorganized?
Yes. As a matter of fact, I had Renee read a book that I wrote a while back, probably 10 years ago, because I needed to see, I'm such a different writer now, I'm such a different person, and I needed the distance. I needed to say, is this, and she said, this is a great story, but it does need to be cleaned up. And, it needs to be, a lot has happened technologically in 10 years since I wrote it. And so it's just that question as to whether or not I would want to go back. And I love the story. I love the character, but I like to move forward. And I think that I don't think that I would go back and fix it. I think that, especially even in a 5-year period, we change and we grow so much. And as much as I like the story, I'm not sure I have it in me to, I'd probably cringe. I'd probably go, "Oh my God, really? Who taught you how to write?" So I haven't had that task, and I don't know that I would. It was one of the things when Chris and I were talking about Delta, and she said, "Well, you need to update it," because I wrote it in the 90s, and she didn't have cell phones, and well, if I updated it, then the whole story would change because she wouldn't be in a warehouse situation. She'd have a cell phone with her, and that would change the entire plot. And so, no, I wouldn't. I'm not sure that I would go back.
Which character or characters from your books is most like you as a person? And if so, how so? And that's from Laura Quick.
Renee asked me that 2 nights ago. In all honesty, the character that I'm most like is Jessie from the Across Time series. Dallas needs somebody else far more, I think, than I do to lead. Delta is too fly by the seat of her pants, go without a plan. Denny in Demon Hunter is too out of control. But Jessie, because she's, I really would, in fact, go back to help myself, to help someone that I used to love back in time. And I like the fact that she's thoughtful in terms of, full of thought. And, I'm definitely, I gotta tell you, I am so not like everybody thinks I am.
How are you?
Beth knows this. The persona that I have, and I think it's so funny when I've gone to do book readings. I can't tell you how many times I've walked into a place and I have heard 2 women go, "Is that her?" "No, that can't be her. She's way too short." And I just kind of laugh because I have this kind of this larger than life being. It was only recently that somebody told me that I wasn't 6'2". I was kind of bummed about that. I thought for sure that I was, tall and strong, and that's all not necessarily the truth. But I am definitely more like Jessie than anybody else.
I had thought about letting this slide, but because you made a comment about it made me kind of giggle to myself. In Maneater, Dallas is 5'8" in the beginning of Maneaters, but she's over 6 foot tall in the Horde.
In the Horde?
Yeah, she grew.
Hey, thanks for pointing that out.
That's because you were talking about height, and I was just like, wait, hold on a second.
Hey, that's good to know. I can go back and fix that.
It's just like,
yeah, I tried. Echo's the only one who's short, which is kind of funny. she's it's kind of like maybe that's why Danica's so
she's
tall.
Short? How short is she? I didn't think she was short.
Yeah, see? Just like people don't think I am.
Mm.
But you're larger than life in real life, too, though. I mean, maybe not in stature, but in personality, certainly.
Well, it is funny because I have had a lot of students' parents meet me and go, "You're Lynn?" I go, "Yeah, why?" "Oh, we thought for sure you were like I had fangs and, Yeah, it's really, it's a lot of fun.
At least a whip, I'd say, from having taken some of your classes.
Yeah, well.
So yeah. What kind of teaching style would you say you have when you're teaching writing?
Oh, ask Beth.
Well, when you are shaping an experience, especially if you're working with the younger girls and you really want to bring their voice out. But I know that you're not, this is my assumption, you're not all butterflies and rainbows when you read somebody's work. How do you keep it real without dampening that flame?
That's a really good question, and I love working with my middle school girls. They are, and whether they're middle school girls or adult women, it doesn't really matter. I think that I deal with and I had somebody today. I was looking at her stuff, and I kind of went, "Oh, I'm not quite sure where to go with this." First of all, I teach with a lot of humor, and I think that there's an approachability to me that you wouldn't normally expect. Just because I don't know quite, Beth, maybe you can speak to this. Why my persona is that, kind of tough girl thing, which is so not really who I am. But I teach with a lot of humor, and how I deal with, like I told somebody today, I don't pay my tennis pro to tell me what I do well. And I think that's the important thing. I think you have to be honest and say, these are the areas that you need work. And you don't do anybody any favors by not presenting them with what your impression is of their stuff. So with the girls, and again, like I said, even with adults, it's you have to be honest. You got to be able to say, this is good, but, because it's the but that keeps you from being published. It's the but that keeps people from reading your stuff.
Yeah, I recently, I was working with Jo Bell, God bless her. She's helping me with a short story that I was working on. And she had warned me before I read her edits the first time that, it can be a little snarky or sarcastic and whatnot. And I was glad she braced me. But there was something about how she said things that really got across. And I think also I have like an urban sensibility. So like I'm used to people cussing and, being snarky and sarcastic. So it really got into that, whatever creative center in my brain. And I was like, oh, that totally makes sense. That's why that doesn't sound good that way, whatever. So it really worked for me. I just had to be ready for it. And I'm like, okay, I can do it. I can man up. I can make it work. I can go through these edits. And God darn it, she's just so wonderful, and I know that I have a better finished product because of her. But damn, yeah.
That's the important thing, Linda Kay, when she's I don't want to say correcting, but when she's guiding or trying to give advice, she definitely, Linda, you always made me feel like I find you smart enough and talented enough that it's worth my time for me to yell at you about some of the sloppy things you did in this writing. And I always got that, from Linda. She used to say to me, like, Beth, it pains me that you're this smart and you missed those commas and you spelled that wrong, because spell check, for Christ's sake, and don't start that sentence with I, and go back and redo this. And, she hurt me on Man Enough, but boy, it came out to be a much better book than it would have been otherwise.
I'm sorry, Beth.
No, not hurt me as in like I cried, but like just really, redo this and do it right.
Well, and I think that's, I just got a new editor myself, and the first 123 pages had 331 comments from her. And so we're all there. And again, that's what I say. I don't pay my tennis pro to tell me what I do well. I know what I do well. And I'm not going to get better by him going, oh, that stroke looks really good. I think you have to have a thick skin to do this. And if you don't have a thick skin, then you should not do this, because you have to, nobody is, is going to escape the red pen. And you should want somebody to get in there and grapple with your work and try to make it, we're in it so much. And I think this was a line that we used to tell our girls a lot. And that was, you can't see the picture if you're standing inside the frame. And every writer is standing inside the frame. Mm-hmm. It's the editor's job to stand outside the picture and say, okay, that's great, but your trees are orange.
That's true. That's very true.
That's kind of how I operate as a writer. I'm willing to say, yeah, I'm too involved, and I need somebody else to pull back and say, this scene is unnecessary. This character shouldn't do this. I'm fortunate that I was trained by Catherine Forrest, who, that woman that could shred my work like nobody's business.
I've heard this about her, but
true.
she's, you know, it's almost like midwifery. I think she's helped a lot of authors come into their own.
Oh, she's brilliant.
Well, absolutely, and that's what their job is. Their job isn't to make you, you know, throw your shoulders back and say, "I'm a writer." I mean, their job is to make you cry. And so, you know, I guess I kind of take that approach. I hope that I don't do it with a heavy hand and make anybody feel bad about what they're doing. I think working with the middle school girls is, and I have a couple in there that are so good that I'm actually going to approach Sapphire and ask if she's willing to do a young adult novel.
Oh.
Oh, cool.
I mean, these girls, I have two in particular. As a matter of fact, Renee started reading one of the stuff, and I hadn't looked at it yet. And I started to reach for it to take it from her so I could shred it, and she pulled it away, and she goes, "No, I'm totally into this."
Nice.
And I thought, you know, that these two gals, and again, they're, you know, 13 and 14 years old. They're the best. They are the best writers that I've read of anybody that I'm looking at or mentoring or helping. Bar none. And so it'd be really fun for Sapphire, I think, to throw out a young adult novel written by a young adult and kind of, you know, do something a little cutting edge like that would be really cool. So my girls are working to that end. They believe that by the end of the year, will come up with a full-length novel that we can take to Sapphire and do something different.
That's just fantastic.
It's kind of what Sapphire is about. You know, we definitely are cutting edge, and we definitely do different and wonderful things. And I think Chris will be open to at least taking a look at it, because young adult, you know, there's a young adult writing is huge right now, and to get something written by a kid that's, you know, that's exceptional, that would be really fun.
Very cool.
Of course, my brain is like, and that would be great on your college application.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it's so ingrained in me, you know.
Speaking of readers, Liz, can I ask a question that got sent to me today?
Absolutely.
This was by a person who referred to herself as Curious Wino.
Which is a play on Catherine B. Forrest's book, Curious Wine.
Of course.
Some people might not know that, though. Curious Wine.
Thank you.
Curious Wine came out in the 70s, I believe, or the 80s, early 80s.
I think it was the second lesbian book I read after Desert of the Heart, actually, when I was a teenager many, many years ago. But this woman wanted to know if readers had ever sent you suggestions on what they would like to see you write, and if so, what was the weirdest or funniest one that you ever got?
There is no second part to that question, because nobody has ever asked me to write anything different. Nobody's ever said, "Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that?" The only person that has ever said, "Why don't you write a zombie series?" was Lori, my ex. She did not ever watch Walking Dead with me, ever. Didn't like the sound that the zombies make, so she was always
I hate that
walking
too.
out of the room and putting her hands over her ears. I no. And she came out once out of the cave and said, she's kind of staring at me because I was like on the edge of my seat with my hands up to my face going, "Oh my God. And she goes, "Why don't you write a zombie novel?" And it was so funny because I realized that was kind of how my first novel got written, and I just wanted to throw this out because I think this is something that's kind of speaks to people that are wanting to write, and that is, I write, and for both Taken by Storm, my first book, and Man-Eaters, I write the books that I would like to read. And I think that's probably the greatest mistake that new writers come into, is that they're either trying to write in a genre that isn't necessarily something that they would like to read, or they're trying to get, maybe that they're caught up in the fad of vampires or the trend of werewolves or whatever it is. And for me, I wanted to write Delta's story, because I was so tired of reading, and having been a cop myself, I was so tired of every detective and private eye and cop sleeping with the suspect, the witness, the DA, the corpse. I mean, it didn't really matter. They were sleeping with everybody. And I remember thinking, that would never, ever have. It was so unrealistic and so off the chart, kind of pandering to the lesbian sexual, hey, look at us, we're out there, that I wanted to write a character that was monogamous. And Delta and her partner, Megan, were throughout the entire series. And so I wrote that series and I moved on. So it was really interesting when Lori came in and said, why don't you write one? And so I did with Man-Eaters, is I wrote this book that I wanted to read, and that was how different it would be for, and of course I don't want to, because there is quite a twist in Man-Eaters, but what would it be like as lesbians? And in Mob Rule, which is the next one coming out, by the way, and I think, Beth, that I needed to answer your question about that. We're going to come full circle there. That comes out February 1st. And I got to tell you, it will grip you from the beginning to the middle to the end, because it deals with, in an apocalypse, women are a precious commodity, and without any rules, men can do whatever they want. And so our little cadre is traveling across the country, having to deal with that lack of, the barbaric behavior that mankind will, devolve into, is what Mob Rule is about. It's less about zombies than it is about human nature, and how at risk we would be in an apocalypse.
And I believe that's true. That's great. I can't wait to read that.
Have either of you read Megan O'Brien's The Three?
No.
But I think you're like the second person who's brought her up.
Well, she's awesome. And The Three is very interesting, is because it's further down the line in like a post-apocalyptic scenario. And one of the things, I can't remember, I think a lot of people could not procreate, so the folks who could, the women were forced into, having children and whatnot. And that's not what happens in this book, but it shows what the different societies are like. There are three people who they kind of find each other, and the people that they encounter. And some of the societies are very, all right, the women, we need them to make babies, and they're special and they're wonderful, and we need to protect those who can give us babies. And but that's the only role that they could possibly have.
Wow.
Okay, well, yeah, Mob Rule's because it would. It doesn't matter whether it's a zombie apocalypse or some kind of a different virus that comes through. If there's a breakdown in the internal structure, we as women are at risk, big time. And so that's what it's about. And it really does. It, from the very beginning until the final breath, you're going to be going, oh my God, yeah. You're going to become a survivalist.
I have a question for both you, Linda and Beth. Have you ever been in a situation where something you've learned from either a post-apocalyptic book or movie, have you ever had to use that kind of stuff that you've learned from fiction in your real life?
I'm going to speak first here because Linda has a great theory about survival and fiction, which she has taught in a couple of her classes that I've taken. I have fantasies about it all the time. My daydreams, of course, there's some sort of, huge something zombie apocalypse. And of course, I'm one of the ones that lives without a doubt because, that's just how it would be. And so then, of course, I could take all of this information that I've learned from reading these books and apply it to saving myself and my friends. But Linda, you say that's why we read in more ways than one.
Yeah, what? Go ahead and speak to that, Beth.
Linda has said that our brains are hardwired for survival, and I agree with this. So a lot of times we read not so much just for the pleasure or not so much just for escapism, but to actually teach us how to survive, whether it be if something comes up in your life where you're in a new love relationship and you say, oh, I've read about that before and they handled this. Or if you're in a zombie apocalypse and you can say, well, yeah, but in Man-Eaters, Dallas took everyone to the bayou and they were able, it's we read to learn how to survive in one way or another. I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, it's Liz, we were talking about again this book that I've read about called Wired for Story that talks about what's really happening in your brain. Our brain's job is to keep us alive, and so even though we're reading for pleasure and escapism, our brain is constantly looking for those things that it can use. It can take out and extrapolate and say, okay, this is what I would do if I were in a relationship where somebody cheated on me with their ex-husband, or this is what I would do if I were in a zombie apocalypse. And we don't consciously know that that's what the brain is doing, but that's what the brain is doing. And so, but to answer your question, no, I've never had to to do anything, although I gotta say, if there was some kind of an apocalypse, whether it was a zombie one or not, I would definitely seek me out because I now have enough weaponry.
That's true. You are prepared. Liz, I was on the receiving end of someone who got a survival skill from a book or a movie before, and I'm about to totally embarrass Ashley Lake. But I had been flirting with her at the Dallas Con, and I told her I very much expected her to ask me to dance. If she wanted to dance with me, I was not going to make that happen. And so she walks across the room and stops in front of me and then just straight arm puts her hand out and looks at me without saying a word. And so, of course, I put my hand in hers and got up and danced, and I was all impressed. And I said, I'm completely impressed. She's like, well, yeah, I saw it in a movie once. I just thought I better try it. Asking a woman to dance, that's a survival skill.
Oh, my goodness. I actually asked this question because I've used what I've learned in fiction twice in real life circumstances.
Nice. Let's hear it.
Okay.
I'll do the more amusing one first and the serious one second.
Okay.
The more amusing one was Superstorm Sandy hit where I live pretty hard. I live in the Barrier Islands in Jersey Shore. And Ilya and I were here during the storm. And so we worked really well as a team. Because both of us, I think a lot of the years we've been together, we always watched those different types of movies. So we knew, we knew how to divide and conquer. And we weren't arguing with each other over stuff. We were just making shit happen. The water started getting really high and it was close to our doors. And I was like, oh my God, you have to go in the car. We have the water in there. We're not going to be able to get out to it. And, we have to do it now. Because because the flooding, she was in the midst of taking things from our pantry up to the second floor so that we'd have access to it if the first floor completely flooded.
Wow.
And so I pulled her away from that to get the water, and we worked, we were saying, as a couple, I think that we were very complementary because we never, got at each other's throats. We had a plan. I was filling the tub with water so that I actually be able to flush my toilet. And, all sorts of stuff. So that was like we were joking that this was our zombie apocalypse moment, mostly because once the water receded, and there was destruction that I've never seen before. You don't think of things that tornadoes doing those things in a hurricane, but there were tornadoes in the hurricane. So there, on my block, which is so small, there was one house that was demolished. There was another house that floated up off of its moorings and went 2 blocks away. Because in the beaches, we don't have deep, we don't have basements and stuff like that. So, once the bay hit the ocean and then, connected, and then we had the flooding, some of the houses, the sand just washed away. And so, when we wanted to leave, once the water had receded, and there was a way for us to leave, and we couldn't go on the shuttles because they wouldn't take large breed dogs, and we had my husky at the time. So we decided, like, fuck it. I'm not going to wait around until, they're going to, let us take our dog with us. So we were actually going to walk from where we lived to the bridge, which is maybe like a half a mile or so. So there's like debris everywhere. I have my dog next to me. Ilya found, this hand truck that we put 2 big pieces of luggage on it with like all of our stuff, including, things with, for the insurance companies and whatnot. We were going down, the one place that was the flattest and that, we had the easiest way of getting through the muck and the mire. And, there was a cop car that came by and it's like, where are you going? And we're like, we're going to walk over the bridge because we're not leaving our dog, And so they're like, oh, we'll help you get through. And we're getting closer to, we can actually see the bridges in sight. And there's this emergency center in the parking lot of A&P where I used to work as a teenager. And we were about 100 yards away because, like, the cops told us to go in there and then they'd help us get over. And this cop stopped us. He said, stop. So we do. And he said, does your dog bite? And I was like, no, she don't. She'll just lick you to death. He was like, okay. And we got over the bridge in an ambulance, because like to get our stuff in and the dog and whatnot. So we got over the bridge in the ambulance, and my parents were hidden, I think about a block or so away because they didn't want to be shushed away by people. Because my father was like Mission Impossible. He was going to get onto the island and get us out, but he couldn't, no matter how many different ways he could try to get it, he couldn't get to us. And so he was hiding behind, and we got to the other side, and I was like, how are you going to get in touch with my parents? Their cell phones are dead. And then my dog is a husky and howls. So my father had heard my husky howling, and then he came out from where he was hiding, in his SUV, and then took us up north, and they very politely opened the windows about 20 minutes later because apparently we stunk. So that's the funny story.
Right.
That's the funny story. The not funny story was 9/11. And I was working across from Grand Central Station. And, we saw things happen on, like, they trundled TV so we could, like, get some TV coverage and watch what's going on, downtown. We finally were able to leave, and, my close friend and I was gonna stay with him in the Village, and we were gonna go on 42nd Street, but we saw hundreds of people booking, like, running for their lives, because apparently there was a threat at Grand Central. And I was like, I grabbed my friend Matt's hand. He was my beautiful gay boy friend. And I dragged him back through, in through the deli. And I had to shoulder people out of the way in the doorway from the deli because people were waiting around to see more shit blow up. And I thought that was so fucked up. I was like, out of my way. And as, I'm dragging him, and I used to be in rugby in college, so I'm used to tackling through folks. And so, like, I'm dragging him, and I was like, we're running towards downtown. And I was like, oh my God, we're on too many subway lines. We need to go to the right to get away from them, but not too close because we're still running downtown. Not too close because, what if they blow up the Empire State Building? So I kept on kind of correcting my path as we were like, running and walking and making our way down to the Village, which is where I actually ended up staying. So all these different things, these like different warning signs, like don't go here, move away from there, close the windows, cover things up, all these kind of things. All things that I've seen or read before and I actually used in real life.
Nice. Very cool.
So yeah, those are my 2 real life melodramas.
So, I mean, that's then Linda's right that, we can learn survival from literature and perhaps should.
One way or the other, again, whether we're conscious of it or not, I like the fact that that's kind of what's happening, that our brain is going, okay, it's always looking for what to do if it ran into that situation. And I love, again, it's just that such a geek. I love how the brain works, and I like to learn, you know, what I can do as a writer that's going to titillate or tickle or turn on or make, you know, come to life that part of the brain that we're not used to having, you know, come to life. So it's a great book, and it's.
Who knows? Like I you know, in the future, I may survive because I read a Linda Kay Silva novel.
I know I've certainly been titillated by her.
Oh! Are we back with you guys in bed again?
No, I'm talking about the book.
Oh. This has been such a great conversation, and I've enjoyed having you two brilliant, wonderful, humorous women on my show. It's been quite the education.
Thank you so much. You know, I got to tell you that Beth started off as a student of mine in college, and then she actually was picked up by Sapphire after I told her to stop talking about writing and write, which she's still bitter about. She makes sure everywhere we go that she tells people how mean I was to her and told her to shut up and write. But the beauty of it is, and I just want to leave you with this, one of the best parts about being a published author is the people that you meet. And I mean the people that we got to meet at GCLS and people that have become wonderful friends of ours. And Beth Burnet and I are soulmates and sisters from another mister and all of the other cliched things that it's for me, the biggest gift I've gotten from being a writer is knowing Beth Burnet.
I love you too, Linda.
All right, you have fun in your read, and we'll talk later. And Liz, thank you so much for having us.
It was so super. Thank you so much too.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Liz.